Hello, I'm Enzo, and can you beat Atomic Heart with only the Electro? This is a run I have had in mind since I first played the game, and now it's finally here. The rules of this run are simple. I can only use the Electro to damage enemies. I won't be using other powers, or shock, to damage enemies at least, and I will be playing on normal mode, since it's been over a year since I played this, and if I'm not enjoying a run, the video never turns out well. To start out, it takes quite a while before you get into the actual game. Like, the whole starting section is a super long cutscene. It's just walking and talking and waiting. I'm also not sure how popular this game is or was, since it was released at a bad time. So if you haven't seen this game before, it is easily one of my new favorites for tons of different reasons. I won't go too much into the story, but I will give you the footnotes so you're not too confused about what's going on. I believe it's set in like 1955, obviously very alternate history, where the Soviet Union made insane advancements in technology, and they made this stuff that is pretty much the key to everything, called polymer. That's why we have robots, why the main character, which his name is P3, he also goes by Sergei Nechayev, I believe, but we'll just go with P3. Polymer is the main reason he's alive. It is a really cool story, and there's just tons of lore when you look at it. The main thing you might have noticed so far is the fact that this is supposed to be a first-person shooter, and yet this is all very peaceful. Well, yes, the beginning is, but trust me, it quickly spirals out of control. While your car is being hoisted by a robot to your destination, some of the other flying robots initiate combat mode and shoot you down. That's definitely not a good sign. And, long story short, all the robots are in combat mode now, and they are killing every single human they can find. We try to get into a flying elevator, but guess what? It's controlled by a robot. So we fall and go unconscious for a few days. When we wake up, the whole place is a disaster. I mean, what did you expect? We need some sort of action here. I pick up my axe, and now it's time to get to work cleaning up this mess. I was trying to show off my cool mechanics because I've been playing a little bit of Cyberpunk right before this, but got myself stuck in the polymer like an idiot, so yeah. I'm very much trying to dodge the robot's attacks because, I don't want to get hurt. And it's not like I have healing or anything just yet. We'll get that a bit later on. But these are the damaged lab technicians, and obviously the starting enemies, so they're extremely easy. After that, we meet one of the coolest characters ever, Granny Xena, and a robot knocks us down into the next level. One of the coolest things about this game is the super unique looting system, where you pretty much use telekinesis and you can kind of sweep through tons of different containers. I also like the neat little animation where everything kind of floats towards you. It's pretty cool. And obviously I'll be doing quite a bit throughout this run because loot is always good. I'm obviously skipping most of the cutscenes in the pure interest of time, but I will show the most important stuff, like getting this shotgun. Now, you might be wondering, why am I not immediately using said shotgun? Well, that's because I want to conserve as much ammo as possible for a little bit later. Thankfully, as I've done more and more looting, and looking around places I actually haven't found before, which is crazy, I found some more shotgun shells, so you do get quite a few at the beginning, but better to keep them than waste them for now, especially when these are just the basic lab technicians. The first ones you fight are damaged. These are relatively normal white suits. Alright, I can hear all of you screaming already. Why am I not using the Electro? You said this is Electro only. Well, unfortunately, you don't get the Electro until a bit into this level, so it's gonna take me a while to get there. For now, just bear with me, alright? And honestly, there are plenty of times in the game you can use stealth, but Electro only, so I only used it this one time. I might have done stealth a few other times in my other two runs, but there are so few rare use cases for it. It's funny, the first time I played this game, from my experience with Fallout, I knew that there was going to be something in the bathroom, and I was 100% correct. After that, a drill interrupts my experience, And after this doctor heals us from that injury, guess what? This is the reason I was saving that shotgun ammo. Yes, that is a lab technician. I call these ones black suits because of, well, what they're wearing. This is the first boss, but it's more like a mini boss, I guess. This is still the tutorial pretty much, and the reason I saved up all my shotgun shells. Thankfully, that worked because man, I always struggle with this guy. Now, I'm not usually a puzzle guy in video games. Actually, I hate most puzzles in video games, but this game does them just right. These puzzles are so much fun. They take a bit to learn, but I really, really like them, especially this one. It takes specific timing, but you learn it very quickly. Now, a hallway filled with hanging dead bodies is not a good sign on its own, but singing to add to it? Yeah, that makes it far creepier. Anyways, I've already been through this whole game twice, at least the main story, so I know what to expect. I obviously get my loot first, and then mentally prepare myself, because guess what? This is Nora, the repair vendor. Most of the humans that weren't killed by the machines, Nora got instead. And she was trying to do the same with the Major. However, she actually takes a liking to him, which I think is pretty hilarious. And Nora easily has the best lines in the game. It's been a while since I defeated the first mini-boss, and I've been using my shotgun freely now because, well, I can, and I've been finding plenty of ammo. This is the first part of the game that makes you actually do some parkour, and it's relatively simple for most of the game. It does require some thinking. I'm just glad that they updated it some time ago and made the parkour go way faster. Because when I played it, I think the day after it was released on Xbox Game Pass, the parkour was so insanely slow to climb across pretty much all those beams. It was horrible. I am so glad they fixed that. The great part about remembering most of this game, obviously I don't know all the enemy spawns and everything, I remembered there was another black suit I'd have to deal with. Thankfully he has to get up before we fight him, so that lets me fire a few extra shots, making it a super easy fight. A little bit later, we finally get the ability to actually upgrade our character, because there's a whole skill tree, tons of cool and powerful skills we can get. You get the experience, or in this case it's called neuropolymer, from defeating enemies and looting containers. Now, unfortunately, we can't choose what we want just yet, but the first skill, the one we're forced to learn, lets us survive a lethal strike every so often, which is very nice. Unfortunately though, that chews up all of my health, which I've been keeping up really well. I've only had to use like 2 healing items. In the next cutscene, we're attempting to apprehend this guy, Petrov. We are told that this is the guy that hacked all the robots and made them attack all the people. But naturally, he runs away and spawns a ton of robots to come to his defense. This leads us on a wild goose chase, which is a large part of the story. And here's another mechanic you should know about. These are called lanterns. You can bring them to different places and they can be used to activate different things. Generally in puzzle levels, but obviously that's the tutorial there. Like you saw earlier, you can actually swim through polymer, and that can get you to a bunch of different places in this game, which is cool. But now, everybody, it's the moment you've been waiting for. I finally have access to the Electro. You're actually forced to craft it as a crafting tutorial. This is the item and upgrade part of Nora besides the skill tree. And it's finally in my hands. The one weapon I'm going to use for the rest of the run. Alright, so here's the whole reason why this is a challenge. As you can see, we've gained a new bar on the bottom right. That is the energy bar. The Electro doesn't use ammo, it uses energy from that bar, which slowly, and I mean very, very, very slowly, recharges over time. A lot of my early game is going to be spent waiting for that energy to recharge in between fights. So that is a major issue with this weapon. Its low damage and reliability on said energy makes this an actual challenge, and why I was so interested to see how this would go. Thankfully, all weapons in this game can be upgraded. Unfortunately, I don't have the materials for everything, and you have to unlock some of the upgrades from some of the pylons, aka puzzle levels, and those will be way later on. Well, the energy vampire is actually at the end of the game, so it'll be quite a while before I can get anything crazy good on this. Now, you might be wondering, alright, if your energy recharges so slowly, how's this gonna work? Well, there are actually items you can craft that will recharge your energy. I just need to unlock them first, which will be in a little bit. Either way, we finish up another lock, because there's like a trillion locks in this game, makes plenty of sense, and continue on. Here's your first taste of how the Electro is gonna go for this whole run. It is certainly going to be slow, with its almost non-existent damage. It can kill stuff, it's just gonna take its sweet time. I barely dealt with a small group of easy to kill enemies, and I'm already out of power, which means I'm gonna run back to a save room, they're both save and safe rooms, and wait just to recharge my energy, cause it's not like I can do anything else at the moment. Looking back at the footage, I estimate that it takes 1 minute per bar to fill up. That is 3 minutes I have to wait for all of my energy to fill up in between each combat encounter. Obviously, I paused the recording after this because this is how I got that information, but that's just to give you an idea of how slow this is gonna be. Thankfully, another robot got itself trapped like a complete idiot. I will use every single thing I can to my advantage in this run. Trust me. And honestly, especially because this is an early level, I don't know how to make this any more interesting. Combat is just slow and painful. Missing a shot makes it even worse because missing a shot means lost energy and lost damage and of course time. And you can see it gets worse once I reach a higher level when I'm running out of energy and there are still enemies around. That's bad. I'm also going to take this time to note, you'll see the Steam achievement thing popping up in the bottom right. Now, I can turn off the Steam overlay, but it also glitches out and then tabs me out each time it pops up. I'm guessing it has something to do with me holding Alt. Alt is your scanner in this game, which you see me using every so often. So yeah, unfortunately, you'll just have to see that through most of the run. This save room provides us a nice vantage point for the rest of the level. I'm going to be popping out of it to get some loot, kill some enemies, then hiding back inside of it to recharge my energy. That's how a good portion of the early game is just going to go. Nothing I can do about it. The best example is this black suit. Now, I have no clue how a fight with one of these guys would go normally, but I'm not going to take any chances. I will cheese as many things as possible. The only issue, I can't aim down at him. I understand because of like realism, you can't actually look down that much while being stable, but still, this is a major issue because now he's just hiding from me. Thankfully, I found an angle where I can hit him and he can't hit me, that being the important part considering these guys have lasers. Well, actually, all the lab technicians do. The white suits just don't use it unless they truly can't hit you. The black suits use it regularly. That's the major difference. Either way, considering how many shots he took, I think that was the right choice. In case you were wondering what happens when I run out of energy in the middle of the fight, well, it's pretty much what you can guess. I get to play Ring Around the Rosies with any enemy until I have enough energy to fire my next shot, so on and so forth until said enemy or group of enemies is finally dead. Yeah, the beginning of this run is certainly very painful to play through, but trust me, it gets better and way more action-packed from this point on. We find Petrov, and apparently he's dead, or so we thought because obviously he's not dead this early on. We're still chasing him. He just tricked us, of course. But here is one of the most important parts of the run. I got a dynamo from this chest, both the physical object and the blueprint to make more. Unfortunately, they're quite expensive, but these recharge your energy, which is insanely important. And obviously, as I go through the game and loot an insane amount of stuff, I'll have plenty of materials to make more of these. So that has solved one problem, but since I have so few currently, I will only be using them in absolute emergencies. I'll just wait for my energy to recharge all of the other time, but that's an insanely good item to have. The next area I'm headed to is the hot labs, which if you go in early, will literally turn you into a crispy critter. We need to cool it down. To do that, we're using these cryogenic lanterns, and we need to feed them into these boilers. This is another puzzle. Go figure. It took me a minute to figure out where the initial entrance tube is, but after that, it's relatively easy. You just have to guide it through all of the pipes, which is a little bit annoying, I'll admit. And once you've cooled down, every single time you actually get to a boiler, it spawns some enemies that I'll have to deal with. Also though, it is a neat little puzzle section with some combat in between. Oh, I kind of forgot to mention, but we're getting all of these to activate a tree that'll open the door to the next area. Yeah, that's mildly important. So I need 4 canisters from 4 different areas. Thankfully, this one only needs parkour now that I've cooled down the entire area. In the next area, we get our first glimpse at the other type of enemies, organics. There are quite a few in here, including these, mutants. They're humans that have been infected by the plants called sprouts. They are very vicious, and take quite a few shots, as you can see here, to deal with. Considering how many of these we're going to go up against, yeah, this is going to take a while. Especially considering it looks like it takes an entire bar to deal with just one. That'll be fun. With the pure amount of them I can see in here, I know that I can't just run away, hide, and recharge my energy. So, this is the first time I actually had to use one of the dynamos. I haven't paid enough attention to figure out how much energy this recharges. I want to bet it's like 7, maybe even 10 bars in total over its however long duration. But it lasts quite a while and gives you a ton of energy, so it's a great investment. Especially if you're doing something like this where you only have energy weapons to deal with. Another thing I've been skipping over in the interest of time is all the skills I've been upgrading. I'm going for a skill that allows you to heal or use consumables with one hand. Obviously that's pretty important in a run like this, and just in general with this game really, but I'll be using quite a few healing and of course energy replenishing items. So I need that. That's always the skill I go for first. The energy upgrade skills can wait, especially considering they're nothing crazy. Another super neat kind of puzzle where you have to line up the dots. Thankfully, that one just went instantly. I guess I'll need to find a better example. But I knew exactly what was coming here. The hedgehog, aka Hedgie. Now, we don't have to fight it just yet, that'll be way later on. I just think the cutscene for it is super cool. How the game's kinda showing what's going to attempt to murder you way later on. Either way, I now have access to this area, which is filled with robots. Thankfully, they can't reach me up here, so you know I'll be cheesing the hell out of this. This is also when I discovered that the white suits actually had the ability to fire lasers up. I really did not expect that. I didn't think they could, but good to know. So what's the gimmick of this place, you may ask? Well, you're stuck on a slow-moving platform in the air. A fall means likely death, and you're being swarmed by all these flying Polovics? I don't know. I'm gonna butcher one of these words eventually, so might as well butcher them all at this point. Alright, but those are the smaller robots. They're not so bad. The owls are a slightly larger issue. They are both bigger, they carry more powerful lasers, and missiles. I'm just trying not to use any energy if possible. And I really want to save my dynamos unless it's an absolute emergency. Since I knew that these are the doors that spawn robots, I was gonna wait until my energy was mostly full. And my hunch was correct. 2 more lab technicians come out. Thankfully, these are just basic white suits, so they're relatively easy. This just means I'll have to wait for all of my energy to recharge. Again, there goes 2 more minutes. But there was nothing else too interesting there. This, I think it's called like a mother, which, fitting but also weird, is what spawns the sprouts. You really want to target these things so that sprouts don't spawn and thus mutants aren't created. The thing I love the most about this part is the little puzzle. So you just go around from tank to tank, turning the handle and seeing if it lights it up or not. Your goal is to make all of the squares green. And I completely did not expect it the first playthrough, but once I saw it, I don't know, it's kind of hilarious but horrible at the exact same time. It literally blends up all the animals into polymer. So, yeah, that's where polymer comes from. At least part of it. Awesome, but also gruesome. While I was doing some exploring, I got scarily close to dying because of a body block. This happened quite a few times in this run, so yeah, try not to do that. Before I start the entire next area, I found this Raffic. Thankfully, these guys aren't hostile, until you decide to start attacking them. I really just wanted to see how difficult one of these would be. It probably isn't the best idea considering this is very early on, but considering they don't attack other enemies, he's really just a threat in my way, so I'll have to deal with him. Considering he's relatively easy to dodge, I decide to not use any of my consumables except for some adrenaline because I wanted to see how that works. I forgot, it refreshes your dodges like very fast, so you can dodge constantly, which is amazing for boss fights. While waiting for my energy to recharge, the fight took a total of 5 minutes and 30 seconds. That's quite a bit, but on the bright side, Raffics can drop some really rare loot, which can be very handy. So, I mean, it's completely worth it to kill them if I find them. This level was another great example of why I should not have had my brightness up this much, but to be fair, it looks absolutely beautiful. I forgot to mention, but these are almost at max settings for everything. A lot of the stuff is ultra. I think there might be like atomic or something above ultra for some, but I didn't want to overload my graphics card, which actually this is only taking like 70% with playing and recording, which is pretty insane. Either way, your goal in this area is to defend all of the turbines from sprouts getting up into them, and obviously from the sprouts getting to the dead bodies to mutate them. It's a very cool and well done section. I found another black suit lab technician, but this time he's close to me. This fight was a little bit scary, but it only took 2 bars of my energy to take him down. It's good to know my limits now. The next main area is the pesticide canister, and this part is so freaking cool. So you've got this giant angry plant that will try to kill you when it wakes up, but we have a little bit of time. That I got some more upgrades. One gives me energy when I take health damage, and then another bar of energy. It might have been smarter to go for less energy consumption instead, but that's extremely expensive. The only thing I forgot about having another bar of energy is the 4th and 5th bars don't actually regen. It only regens up to the 3rd bar before you get the last upgrade. So that is the issue, but you know, if I'm using a dynamo or if I get hurt, then I actually get the benefits of the 4th energy cell. Either way, the next part of this level is a simple combination of puzzling and parkour. Nothing interesting at all. Besides the fact this game commits like one of the biggest sins in gaming, at least in modern games, of not letting you skip cutscenes, at least the cutscenes are so insanely well done. Like this one, for example, you blow up the giant plant. It is just absolutely beautiful. This gives us the final canister we need to actually reactivate the birch tree, back all that time ago. However, leaving isn't gonna be easy. You know when the game plays some really good music that something crazy is about to go down. For example, when they're playing some good opera like this, well, I kind of forgot what happened here until the giant mutant came out. So yes, there are the normal mutants, and then there are the larger, far more difficult ones. They have a range of attacks, including being able to throw different types of sprouts, like the green corrosive ones, the explosive orange ones, or just throwing the normal ones to hurt you even more. These are actually one of the rarest types of enemies in the game, and honestly they're not that difficult compared to some of the other enemies that we'll be facing later on. With all 4 canisters, I can finally reactivate the birch tree. I forgot just how long this first level takes. It might actually be one of the longest levels in the game compared to all the other ones. But with that, I can finally make my way to the surface. But the surface is far deadlier than the underground complexes. Why? Well, the hives. What do the hives do, you ask? They spawn a bunch of these shellas. What do these things do? Well, they can repair robots and lights, pretty much infinitely, which is really bad. Not to mention cameras. So my goal is just to get through the surface as fast as possible. There isn't too much time for looting or hanging around, because the robots will overwhelm you if you're not careful. The only decent thing is the fact the surface has a ton of loot, and the lab technicians cannot be repaired. That sounds like an absolute nightmare if they could. I've also never been able to get into this house because of the infinitely repairing and respawning robots. It's a true shame, but I don't think there's anything crazy in there. The other major issue is the fact I couldn't figure out that lock, because I haven't made that on PC yet. Because I haven't tried that on PC yet and I have no clue how it works. After that, we're attacked by one of these, Balayashes? Close enough. But, of course, Granny Xena, in all of her glory, comes and saves us. She also teaches us how to use these things. These give us a cool view of the map and gives us access to the cameras. This is incredibly important as a main feature of the surface. You can access cameras and some let you activate certain objects. The tutorial makes you access the gate and open it up to go to the next area, but they'll come in handy later on to open up other stuff. The next area has us looking for some tickets. We first search the talking bodies, and I'm 99% sure I actually dodged a troll here because I went to loot some other places and you actually get two different tickets. The first body gives you a normal white looking one, but the second is a way fancier looking one, and I'm pretty sure you need to get the fancier one instead of the basic one. I feel like I've dodged that all three of my playthroughs actually, but I am a loot fiend at the end of the day, so I was gonna come here either way. In one of the many unskippable cutscenes, our old friend Hedgie comes back, and he is not playing around this time. He straight up attacks and derails our train, quite literally, and trust me, this is not the last we've seen of him. Even though we're not fighting the hedgehog just yet, it doesn't mean we're completely safe, because the game now introduces an enemy I had completely forgotten about. There is a fourth type of lab technician. These are the combat versions. Yes, you think the black suits are difficult? Nope, these ones are far more difficult. They have a shock baton, shock attacks, and a shield. 'Cause of course, right? There are some cases where you can stun lock and kill them before they get their shield out, but once they do, you have to hit the critical spot in the middle to actually destroy it. Or them first. Also, go figure, they're resistant to the freaking Electro. Quite a few enemies in this game are resistant to the Electro and shock, but less than I actually expected, which is very nice. Either way, I am not looking forward to fighting more of those guys. After making my way around the place, I access some more cameras. We need to open up this door here, which is guarded by yet another black suit lab tech, but this gives us very important access to two things. Since this is still like the tutorial, you can't do overload relay, which apparently I looked it up and that's how you can disable enemy respawning for like 15 minutes. But more importantly, this lets us use these hawks. Don't you dare make any comments about it either. The hawk allows us to fly high up into the air. Now, it's not obvious until it finishes its process, but it spawns a bunch of zip lines once it's all the way up in the air. This can let us go to different points in the map, including, well, where the game tells you to, which once I got there I realized just what it was, but this is actually going to be the boss arena for the hedgehog. Well, it is. I can actually start it right now, but I have other plans. I'm not 100% ready for a major boss like the hedgehog just yet. I want some other loot and preferably upgrades. My next goal is to head to one of the training grounds. I think that I called it, like a pylon earlier? Honestly, no clue where I got that from. But it's basically just a giant puzzle room. They're usually kind of difficult to get to, accessed through cameras or way later on a lock, but in the great interest of time, I won't be showing all of every single one. Just know that they give very good loot and have a bunch of puzzles in them that I'll have to complete. Thankfully, I actually kind of enjoy these puzzles. That's the only reason I'm doing these in the first place. I also completely forgot the fact that there are actually enemies in these. I thought these places were safe. They are very much not, and I learned that lesson way later on, because the last few ones get insane with the enemies they spawn. But thankfully, this is the first one, so just some basic enemies. The second training ground is back near where the Hawk was, and this one was far crazier, at least in terms of combat. We've got all of these Polovics with lasers and owls. Yeah, that's only mildly terrifying. Thankfully, the early owls don't seem to use missiles, but the later ones do, and let me tell you, those things hurt. The laser ones are annoying because they destabilize you, but man, nowhere near as bad as the later ones. But there were quite a few that spawned in here. Either way, nothing I couldn't handle. It should be pretty obvious that I've been upgrading my gun as much as possible this entire time. From this second training ground, I get an upgrade for the barrel. This allows me to change it to stun robots when you shoot them with it enough. Obviously, this doesn't apply to bosses. I don't know why I thought it would do anything at all, but basically it's just better against robots in general. Very useful for harder, like standard robots like the Black Suit Lab Techs. So it's good for now, but it's really bad once you start fighting more organics like the mutants and sprouts. Speaking of robots though, a highlight was also the fact I got freaking ambushed by a bunch of these laborers, the little things with the saw blades, the second I got out. They're really trying to get revenge for me killing all of their brothers in there, aren't they? Alright, there's no more delaying it. It's time for the hedgehog fight. As you can see, it is one giant angry sphere. It's also stupidly fast for its size, which makes absolutely no sense, but I guess anything is possible with polymer. I didn't catch it in the scan, but I don't think it's resistant to the Electro, but it is resistant to shock, which I think they are calculated differently. Either way, my damage is non-existent. I'm definitely gonna have to pop quite a few dynamos to keep me in this fight, and obviously adrenaline with how fast it's just knocking me down. Shooting the hedgehog normally deals very little damage. You really have to wait until it has to enter its cooldown phase and exposes a weak part that you can actually shoot and deal crazy damage on. For being one of the first few bosses in this game, I think the hedgehog might just be my favorite boss fight in total in any game like ever. There is nothing better than this fight in my opinion. The insanely good music just tops it all off. The attacks are very quick to learn and relatively simple to deal with. Obviously this is still normal difficulty, and I have seen there is the Armageddon difficulty, which honestly I don't like crazy difficulties, but I might have to try with how cool this boss is. He also has explosives, which are very dangerous, and of course the singularity attack, which that's definitely not good. Overall, it's an amazing boss fight, but it literally took me 5 minutes of dodging and shooting to deal with, so obviously I had to speed it up quite a bit. Either way, I was extremely happy because Atomic Heart is one of the few games that requires 100% of my focus to play, especially when this happens. I very much appreciate this huge burst of dopamine. After that rush though, you're literally thrown into a puzzle level, which can be good to kind of calm you down, but it's also a little annoying because I want to keep going and fighting enemies. Oh well. Speaking of enemies, they also give you another Ravnik that's optional to fight, but you know, I want that sweet loot from him, so I'm gonna take it. It's a little bit into this area when I finally decide to turn down my brightness because I realized, yeah, it is a bit too much. On one hand, it looks absolutely beautiful, trust me, but yeah, it's a little bit too much. Anyways, this massive room leads to a bunch of other areas we're gonna have to go to get different parts to reconstruct one of the Terrascovas. Thankfully, they are friendly because they're disconnected from the wider network. But you know, I have to get all of her body parts first, so that's gonna be quite a hassle. The other issue with this area is it is filled with robots, and apparently more spawn as you complete the other areas. Great. The only good thing I can say is the fact that there's a black suit at the bottom. However, he seems to have gotten hit by one of the machines going in circles, and I will absolutely take that. Less work for me. First thing, I only now realize what the mission name was actually called. The Major, the Witch, and the Warehouse. Alright, that's freaking hilarious. I don't know how I didn't see that sooner. Either way though, the first area is just filled with mutants. Nothing too bad. Except for the yellow-orangish ones, cause they fly at you, they spit flames, and since I haven't said it yet, when they infect humans and become mutants, The bodies of the orange ones will actually fly at you when they die, like a missile. It's hilarious. I did almost get caught off guard by an ambush of a ton of difficult robots. Shield lab techs, black suit lab techs. Yeah, this is not a good time. And a barrier to keep you in here, which is what really got me. So certainly a close call, but I could handle it. The next area is filled to the brim with robots, and this room just keeps spawning more and more as you get through it. It gets pretty ridiculous. But what if I told you that was not the most difficult part of this level? But what if I told you this room is not the worst, even though it gets pretty close? However, it might have one of the worst parts of the level in here. And believe it or not, it has nothing to do with combat or anything like that. It's a minigame. Now, I sometimes like minigames in games. It really depends what it is. I hate this minigame with every fragment of my soul. This is my least favorite part of this game by miles. If you don't know what this is, it's Snake, which honestly I think can be fun sometimes. However, this is ridiculously difficult for no good reason. It took me a few minutes to finally get a decent run and collect all 7, I believe. If you don't know how Snake works, well, you should definitely look it up to see why I hate this so much, but the controls always just feel a bit off. I'm guessing that has something to do with my graphics settings, but I'm not sure. The other major issue is the fact they don't even make it easier if you fail somehow. No, it's the same difficulty each time. So yeah, very, very bad part of the game. My least favorite by miles. Oh, and of course it spawns a ton of enemies once you're done, not only in this area, but back in the main area. I haven't been counting like how many enemies I've been killing, but I'm gonna say there's a good like 40 enemies in this area alone, maybe even 50 or 60. It got ridiculous. Here's my best example of why I can't just be AFK. I still have to keep up my guard. I have no clue how this guy path found to me, because I could have sworn he was super far away, but he did. While I was trying to recharge my energy, you cannot rest for a second out in the normal levels. And I may have completely forgotten about it until now, but I'm like 8 hours into the run, and only now am I using the special ability of this gun. The first special ability, when you hold right click, allows you to charge up an EMP and do really good area damage. Obviously it's way better to robots, but it's very effective against organics, especially when all of the mothers are clumped up just like that. So I should have probably been using this for way longer than I really did. Might have been a good play. Might have saved me a whole lot of time. But oh well, I know how to use it now at least. And I finally figured out how to do this little lock puzzle. You have to move it around with your mouse. That wasn't obvious at first, especially because there's no indicator of the rotation, unlike on console, but now that I know how it works, it's a whole lot easier. I mean, obviously. You might be wondering why I'm back on the surface. Well, that's because there's a little puzzle thing I had to do. But I started exploring, and it is definitely worth it. There's a ton of loot here, but that guy's gonna be a slight issue. The EMP helps out quite a bit, especially because it can kind of stun him, which is nice. These balayashes, I think they're called, something like that, are ridiculously difficult to deal with. You might have also seen, I have no clue. I think it's recently that I got that Electro. Yes, that's the name of the consumable. It instantly recharges all of your energy slots, but it's a one-time use consumable, and it doesn't recharge energy like the dynamos do. It's annoying that they're called Electros because, but if you really wanted to nitpick, I guess you could say you could only use those, but you only get them at this point. Oh well, consumables are required to beat this run. I legitimately don't think you could beat this run without consumables, with only the Electro. You need the energy regeneration. Another, thankfully rare type of enemy I haven't talked about yet are the medics. They're these two-legged robots that are really annoying because they fire these explosive needles, which deal a ridiculous amount of damage. That's not even counting if they actually hit you. They deal even more damage if they actually stick into you. So yeah, they're very dangerous, but the EMP is very effective against, well, all robots. Thankfully, the other minigame that's here is relatively easy. I think it's actually a really neat design. But hey, I'm just glad it's not the snake one. If you know anything about this level, I think you'll know why I've been avoiding this area, and I've saved it for last, because I am terrified of what I'm about to face. These things are called plouches, and yeah, they are insanely difficult. They're pretty resistant to bullets and some elements, like electricity. Yet again, don't know if that affects the shock, but it kind of feels like it. You're supposed to fight them with melee. Well, guess what? I don't get that luxury. Electro only. This means it's going to be a ridiculously long and difficult fight. This may be the boss version, but I'm going to spoil it a bit and just going to say that there are others, many others, later on in the game. Because as you get further into the game, the enemies get more difficult and they become part of the enemy pool. So yeah, seeing how slow it takes me to kill just one of these should kind of key you in to how the struggle is going to just get worse. This is one of the few times I actually popped condensed milk, which increases damage. These are kind of rare, which makes sense because it's a good damage buff, but I had to use it because I knew this would be a difficult fight. I can definitely tell that the damage is increasing. It's actually a great buff. Overall, this is a very scary and difficult fight, but thankfully, adrenaline is overpowered and lets me dodge it. The only issue is if you get grabbed by this quick time attack, well, you gotta hit all the buttons or else you die. That's the other issue with this game, quick time events. I hate quick time events, especially on keyboard and mouse, because I think controller is just easier to mash than a keyboard, at least from my experience. I'm glad that was over, but that's certainly not the end of my encounters with these abominations. Here are the Tereshkovas, if you haven't seen them already. They have a super cool model, and their face isn't animated. I was looking into the lore behind all of the art and everything, and it's not animated because they couldn't make anything look good and not absolutely horrific, which I think is pretty neat. All of the stuff in this game is insanely well done, including the story, like this for example. So anyways, high up Soviet dude wants to shut down all of Sechenov's plans. Obviously that's bad. Long story short, Major P3 doesn't feel well and he's trying to get out of there, but then he falls unconscious into this crazy realm. This place is called Limbo, and I'll tell you more about it near the end because that's where the story truly starts to pick up. And I have to admit, I absolutely love the look of the whole Limbo world. The second DLC is called Trapped in Limbo, and dedicated to this place. I like the combat, but I absolutely hate the parkour and sliding, which is a shame, because it would have been really good DLC if it was just combat and levels. Almost like the first DLC, which they really should have just done instead of all the parkour stuff. Speaking of parkour, that's what Limbo is all about. It's just a giant level you have to parkour your way through. The only redeeming quality of this place, because I really don't like it, I wish you could just skip it like a cutscene, is the Typhoon class submarine. I think that looks absolutely awesome. One of the coolest submarines ever made, easily. I only realized this run that you can actually just like walk around the sides instead of having to dodge the missiles that literally launch you across the map and waste more of your time. So yeah, that's Limbo. To save a ton of time, I am always driving around the map to different spots, because you can do that, it is pretty neat. And even though I hit some enemies along the way, I'm not really counting it, because this is pretty much just like traveling. There's nothing very interesting or important about any of this. I'm heading to yet another testing ground, and this one is super unique because of its location. It's in this village that's been overrun by mutants and spores. That's a major issue because all of the cameras are disabled. Now, normally this would be an absolute blessing. However, currently it's a curse because I need said cameras to open up the entrance to the testing ground. Anyways, I spent a good half hour here because, yet again, I couldn't figure out how to reactivate the place. I knew where I needed to go, I just couldn't find the entrance. Naturally, it's a pipe that leads to an underground place that I didn't see until, well, I did. This place is also overrun by mutants, and it's pretty simple. You just have to put some of the normal lanterns into the boilers to reactivate them. That causes a huge fire, sets the hawk free, and reactivates the entire area. I think it's actually extremely cool how this place was done. but I'm 99% sure this place is bugged because once you get back to the surface, you're pretty much immediately set to alarm level 2, probably because of all the mutants or something like that, and that's what I heard. I think it's like Zayose Leto? Something like that. I'll put it up on screen. It is literally the first theme that starts playing in the opening cutscene. It's so good. But when music starts playing loud in this game, you know something's about to go down. Thankfully, this area has no robots that will start attacking you, but still, it definitely sets the mood like you're about to be swarmed by tons of enemies. I think that's perfect. The music in this game is, well, absolutely perfect. One of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. With one nightmare over, a complete another one begins. That is another Pleuche. Of course, right? Just like the first, this one just took a while to kill. It doesn't help that there are all these sprouts and mothers here as well. The main issue that I face here is, since I got knocked down, I accidentally used my 2 condensed milks that I had. That's extremely bad because, like I said earlier, these things are rare and extremely useful. So yeah, I'm out of condensed milk for a while. Nothing else really interesting happened besides that. I am just disappointed in myself because of that. So, fun fact, there are 8 testing grounds in total, and I only had to look up 2 in my first playthrough. And I feel like this is probably the same for everyone, but once I've had to look up something for a video game, I always remember how to do it from then on. This one requires quite a bit of juggling the lanterns and throwing them to get to the next level. Yeah, this one completely stumped me on the first try, but now that I know it, obviously I'm never gonna mess it up again. After I got out of there, though, some weird things started happening. The music was still playing super loud, and my alert level was still super high. This is not that clip, but it also happened here. Yeah, my game was getting really laggy. I don't know why that's happening. I don't know if it's like level loading or something like that. This is after reloading the game as well, by the way. So I had to lower the graphics just a tiny bit, but I don't know if that was the issue or not. Honestly, I have no clue what happened here. I want to say it's just loading up a further part of the level that caused it. Just something interesting I wanted to note though. To open up the next pylon, I have to access 3 different terminals and open up 3 different generators. These little things here. It's not insanely difficult, but it did take me quite a while to remember how to do and, well, find all of these things. Now, I didn't have to look up this testing ground. The reason I'm showing it off is because this is my least favorite by miles. Even though there is an awesome Typhoon-class submarine down there, it doesn't make up for the fact that the puzzling, and more importantly the parkour here, is just horrible. And of course you fall to your death if you mess up, which I did not, thankfully, but there's always that looming threat. So you have to do a bunch of different stuff to actually do the parkour here. However, and definitely by accident, I was on my way to doing it the right way, but I may have cheesed the ever-loving crap out of it. Which, yeah, you know what? I'm not complaining at all about. That is some of the best and stinkiest cheese I have ever found in a video game, and I love it. I love it so because I hate this level. So, yeah, there's that level, and that was absolutely beautiful. Not to mention the fact that when I first did this, all of the parkour was still slow, and I had to do it several times over. That was just an awful experience. I'm glad that I didn't have to do it all again. But I do not know how I completely forgot about the surprise on the surface. Maybe because the level is just that bad. But 2 of these things, that's going to be a slight issue. 1 is bad enough, but twins? Thankfully, the EMP stuns them, at least for a little bit, letting me get some easy shots and obviously EMP area damage off. And as a reminder, for how difficult these things are, these are only the tiny versions. Yes, the larger versions exist. Remember the one at the beginning. And this may be foreshadowing, but yeah, we're gonna have to deal with one of those in a little bit. The next testing ground is the only place I equipped a power. Unfortunately, you can't remove shock because it is necessary for a bunch of puzzles and some other doors, but you need the polymer jet to be able to activate that door and get yourself into this place. So that is the only noteworthy thing here. Oh, there's also this completely unintended cheese. I see how you're supposed to do it now. You're supposed to raise that with the other lantern first, but you can kind of just stand on that platform and take the lantern super easily. Definitely more unexpected cheese, but I will obviously take it. One interesting thing that nearly got me killed on the surface was another submarine. Now, how the hell this thing got launched onto the surface? I'm saying this is a multiple thousand-ton submarine that somehow ended up on land. High up on land as well. Like, I don't even know how this happened. Yet again, you might see how much I absolutely love warships in general, and of course these awesome submarines. Submarines are my favorite, if you didn't know, by the way. Typhoons are my second favorite, maybe. My favorite are the I-400 submarines, the ones that could carry seaplanes. All of the Japanese World War II submarines are insanely cool. The only thing of note on my way to the next testing site is this area, which is just a nightmare because of all of these Poloviks trying to repair all of the robots I just killed. That's an issue because I need to open up one of those locks that I move with my mouse, and I keep getting interrupted while trying to open it. This is just a giant nightmare. I really should have gone and overloaded the Hawk, because if you see a bit up on the hill, there's a wind turbine. When you overload the whole relay, it breaks those, and that's what takes all of the Poloviks 15 minutes to rebuild. I think it's 15 minutes, don't quote me on that. Either way though, that was the only interesting thing in this place. Alright, I kinda spoiled it a bit earlier, but here's the giant Baylash fight. This thing is obviously insanely aggressive, so adrenaline is absolutely necessary to keep dodging it. It's a pretty big target, which is very nice. It throws larger rocks than the small ones, and it has the ability to breathe fire. Oh, did I mention it's also resistant to the Electro? 'Cause of course it is. Besides getting stuck on this ball that's in the arena for some reason, the fight isn't too difficult. The attack patterns are very easy to dodge, especially, well, with adrenaline, and it's starting to feel like a lot of the other fights in this game. I'm just constantly dodging backwards. The coolest part though is the fact it can actually spit fire and supercharge the rocks it throws. I think this is a super cool fight, especially with the ground being set on fire means you can't really go there or you will get hurt. Thankfully, I killed it very quickly because, man, I can't imagine what would happen if he sets all the ground on fire. That would have been crazy. The inside of the theater isn't very noteworthy, at least for the first few parts, as this place is just infected with mutants, so I'll be clearing a ton of these guys out. Like I said earlier, since we're getting closer to the end of the game, we're gonna have a lot more Plushes thrown at us. This is the third one I've had to fight so far, and I can't be 100% sure. I don't know if it's just my aim getting worse or the levels being different, but I do have a feeling their modifiers might be different, so they are slightly tougher as you get further in. I'm not 100% sure though. Either way, the fight mimics the first two, except for the fact this one is special and can become symbiotic with the spores, which is what I completely forgot about. It doesn't really change the fight that crazy much, but it does make it far more interesting and unique compared to the other encounters with these guys. But now, the absolute best part of the game, in my opinion. You are stuck in this theater room with waves upon waves of mutants coming at you. In Atomic Heart fashion, some beautiful classic music is playing in the background. However, it gets so much better when the song kind of transitions from the classic music to something called Karma. It is perfectly done. Of course, as the music gets more intense, more enemies spawn, making this easily the best part, and, well, my favorite part of this game. I will say though, the first time I played this, I didn't quite understand this puzzle, but now I completely understand it. And it's basically just guessing until you hear a sound effect play that tells you got it right. You're supposed to make the ballerinas go in the right position to recreate the deaths of these people. I'm seeing it now with way better graphics. Yeah, I get it. This is an awesome section. but it is just pure guesswork, especially considering I know nothing about Ballerina. Maybe people who actually do would have done very well in this section. I don't know. I skipped a tiny bit of the story, but that didn't really matter. We're still chasing Petrov until we finally find him, but he decides he's definitely not going alive. The convenient thing about him being decapitated is the fact we have his head, which has all the codes in it, which we need to pacify all the robots. So his head is now in a jar. Obviously, he planned all of this, besides the head in the jar, so this is a boss fight, and I was preparing for this the entire time. Natasha is a giant and incredibly powerful robot. She doesn't seem to be resistant to the Electro, which is nice, and her size makes her way easier to hit than most other targets. The only issue is she has some insanely powerful attacks, like missiles, but also an attack that knocks her down, so definitely not the worst fight in the game. I will take anything over having to fight a Plush. Right before you leave though, you get kind of a scare. I really thought something was gonna jump out and try to fight me here, like these bots, but no, it's just a neat little horror part of the game, which I very much enjoyed. And this is the last time I'll be using a car in this run, because I'm driving to the final area. The only issue is the fact there are two Plushes on this bridge, and unfortunately, one managed to follow me far past it. I was hoping I didn't have to fight either of these, but considering all of the robots that were in the next area, yeah, I'm really gonna have to deal with these. It definitely doesn't help that all of them are being repaired, making this far more difficult than it should have been. On the bright side, the Plush is now in the open, giving me far more space to kill it. On the downside, all of these other farming robots are attempting to kill me. So it's kind of a trade-off, but I had to kill it in the end. The final testing ground also happens to host a Natasha, which, like I said earlier, is no major issue. Not the worst thing I've faced in a testing ground. Plus, this gives us an even larger arena to work with. Although I completely forgot about all the owls that are firing missiles at you. So it was a little tricky, but only because of the owls. After completing all of that, and because of all the looting I've been doing this run, I have access to every single upgrade on the Electro now. I'm going to swap to the energy vampire because I've never used this before, and I've been spamming the EMP, so might as well try this. It should also be noted from now on, I will mostly be using the normal barrel instead of the robot barrel, because the normal barrel lets you deal more damage each consecutive hit. However, I did swap to the robot barrel a few times to deal with areas where I knew there'd be tons of robots. But I think I should have just kept the conventional barrel because the robot barrel is horrible for bosses. Conventional with consecutive damage is infinitely better. Besides this funny little glitch that launched me up into the air, I wanted to show how the energy vamp module works. It replaces the EMP secondary attack, so this is my right click, and it steals energy. I didn't expend any at the beginning to show it off, but it is insanely cool and very powerful. The only problem is the fact you have to be relatively close to the enemy, and it drags them in at the same time. So risk, but great reward. Even though the theater performance is my favorite part of this game, this hospital comes extremely close because of how awesome it is. This level, at least this first part of it, is playing Travaudoma, which is another one of the greatest songs in the soundtrack. Like I've said already, Atomic Heart has one of the best game soundtracks you'll ever hear. It fits the mood perfectly, playing this awesome metal while being swarmed by a ton of mutants and sprouts. The energy vamp is insanely helpful here, so I don't have to use consumables. Not like running out is an issue at this point. I have way more materials than I'll ever need. That's one thing I actually didn't think about. I have so many more materials because I have the ability to scrap all of my other ammo because I can't use it. I dare say the Electro is easier than using normal weapons. That's how powerful this thing really is. So yes. And once you get the energy vamp module, well, it's pretty much free. Having said all of that, this section, although very scary considering I almost died to another body block, was amazing because the pure adrenaline rush that the music gives you here. The only issue I would really say I faced here is the fact I'm using the wrong barrel. I definitely should have swapped back to the conventional, especially because I had no clue what was coming up, and it made the fight so much more difficult not having good damage for a boss. And to my knowledge, the last type of enemy that's added in this game is the female mutants. So they're like normal mutants, but you can obviously tell it's a woman's body because of the clothes. And they are far more violent and way faster than the normal male mutants. It almost looks like they're flying at some points. Yeah, that's a major threat, but not the worst thing that happened in this place. Besides being body blocked again, I didn't think it could get much worse here. Oh boy, was I wrong, because I completely forgot what this place had in store. I've already said how bad my damage currently is not having the right barrel. Now imagine that, right? Having to fight not just one, but two Plushes at the exact same time. That's going to be a mild issue. Not wanting to bore you and waste even more time, let me just say, this fight, killing two of them at once, took me 10 minutes of being 100% focused, dodging 24/7, using consumables all the time. It was ridiculous. I'm just glad that nightmare is over. I keep saying that, I know, but that's what a lot of this run feels like, considering you're fighting the enemies and thus facing the same situations. After seeing a ton of mutants and another Plush in the next section, I decided to pause the recording to swap my barrel. Unfortunately, I forgot to start recording again, so I'll sum up what happened here. You see this room in that hallway? That's where I had to fight the Plush, because I accidentally lured it through the door, thinking I could try and cheese it, and I kind of got stuck in there with it. So that was sad that I didn't get that recording, but it's not like I would have used too much of it. The larger tragedy is the fact that the music that plays in that room when you're fighting, assumably the Plush and all of the mutants, is Arlecchino. It's the version by Alex Terrible. I call it the male version instead of the female version. I mean, both are really good, but man, it just sets the mood perfectly. I especially like the in-game versions more because it plays more instrumental than vocals, but the vocals come in at just the right time. It is so amazingly well done. It's a shame I don't even have a sample to play for you right now. But the rest of this level is a bunch of robots. And unfortunately, some of them can be repaired. Notably, a lot of the Reapers. I don't actually remember what they're called, the farmers. I'll call them Reapers because these things genuinely terrify me. And since there are the Polovics, they can be repaired, but you can generally kill them quickly enough. Why these things are inside instead of outside farming, who knows? Maybe they just want to throw in more difficult enemies for the hell of it. For this part of the story, Petrov's head is now being pulverized so we can get the data out of it. The only issue is that Filatova decides to throw, well, a grenade instead of a stick into our plan, presumably killing Stockhausen. I'm guessing that's what happened. If I remember correctly, you also go into limbo after this because you get knocked unconscious. Oh well. The second and third limbos are nowhere near as interesting as the first one. They're actually quite boring and annoying. After that, I knew what was coming up. The second, but technically third to last boss fight. That is, of course, the Dewdrop. What's supposed to be a giant pump, much like the other robots, it's turned evil and is now trying to kill us. From one of the lore things, near the end, you can actually hear, you actually learn that it can tear through human flesh in 1.5 seconds. That's not terrifying at all. Now, I didn't know that at the time, but obviously you gotta avoid the lasers. I knew that much. Considering I have a few canned milk now, I was okay with using it, especially because I knew this would be a very difficult fight. This is also the first time I used the vodka consumable, because I knew he was going to be a major threat, and damage reduction is very helpful. The one thing I didn't know is the fact vodka makes you drunk. Okay, well, I knew that in real life, but I didn't assume it would actually destabilize you in the game. I should have figured that much. Because of my aim being a bit off the whole time, that made this fight a whole lot longer than it should have been. However, due to the amazing damage buff that the condensed milk gives you, this fight wasn't difficult at all. I don't really know what you would do if the giant dead whale wasn't in your way, but I'm very much glad it is. because that is pretty much the only cover you get to dodge its insanely powerful lasers. I will admit, it is super satisfying near the end seeing his health go down faster and faster when he just sits there and takes it. I appreciate that because this fight is just scary, and the cutscene makes it a whole lot scarier too. I mean, just look at that thing plow through solid rock. Now imagine what that laser could do to anything else. That's just terrifying. Oh, and did I mention, that thing has a plush stuck inside of it? That's controlling it? Yep, go figure. The plush that I always struggle with makes for one of the most difficult bosses in the game, normally. This was actually a relatively easy fight compared to all the other ones so far. After the dewdrop, it's time for more story. And there is some looting in the middle, but it's mostly just sitting around waiting for dialogue. And cutscenes. I kid you not, it takes around 30 minutes for all of this. Either way though, since Sechenov is launching the Collective, where humans can control robots, well, guess what? It's actually a device that can control humans as well. And obviously, some leaders, like Sechenov, are going to be more powerful than the other ones. This entire cutscene shows all the people that have been experimented on and are now being controlled by, well, Filatova, at least. That's just part of the story. I think it is super neat, though. It is very much creepy, though. We also learned the entire story behind Major P3, but I would recommend watching an entire different video on that. Tell me in the comments if you want like a better summary than what I'm doing in this video, because I kind of have an idea to sum up this story in simpler terms. After that, when we were riding in the elevator with Filatova, we go into limbo. Naturally, when we wake up, we're not there, and she definitely isn't either. We wake up to Granny Xena, and she gives us a choice. Go and fight Sechenov, or we can just walk away and forget about everything. If you've played the game before, you should know what ending I'm going for. I have to go fight Sechenov because the twins are the last true boss of this game. The walkaway ending just plays a bunch of cutscenes and that's it. The thing I completely forgot about is the fact you actually fight Left alone first. I know you fight both of them up in Sechenov's office, but yeah, I kind of forgot about this fight. This being pretty much the last boss, but not the last boss fight. Of course, Left is going to be relatively difficult. Thankfully, when I dodge, I don't take damage, so I'm using that to my full advantage. That's one of the skills I got. I definitely should have been better about showing off my skill tree, but man, this is such a massive and complicated run. I would have to find a better way to do this if you want to see another Atomic Heart video. Besides all of the scary attacks she has, both of the twins, if they don't get damaged for a certain amount of time, have that little bar, that's their secondary bar you see there, and my horrible aim allowed her to charge it up instead of interrupting it. So I guess this is a good demonstration, but also very embarrassing that I missed all of those shots. I think there is aim assist in this game, but I definitely have it turned off, as you can tell. I usually have aim assist turned off in games, because I have noticed it messes up my aim. Cyberpunk is a great example. Overall though, that wasn't a horrible fight. However, like some other games, she has a death phase, where she fires this crazy laser attack you probably don't want to get hit by. Thankfully, it is super easy to dodge, although that is just a preview of the next fight. Compared to all the other fights, I think the twins are easier for like most of the fights. I think the beginning of the twins fight is definitely the hardest part of the entire game. Why? Well, my absolute favorite, quick time events. They spam a ton of difficult quick time events on you. And this is all in the name of not being stepped on. And yes, you're not going to be stepped on in a fun way either. Despite how it looked at the beginning, nope, she's trying to impale you. The fight doesn't even begin after that though. They completely toy with you, throw you around a bunch, you have to dodge a falling aircraft engine, which, alright, that idea is kind of awesome. But then the real fight begins. Because of all the cutscenes before this, I have to do all of my what's called pre-buffing now. It's pretty self-explanatory. I consume all of the buffs that I'll need for this fight before I start attacking them. The only issue is that actually empowered their attacks, so now they're a little bit more difficult. But I also wanted to see what the attacks would look like, so it was kind of intentional, honestly. Like I said, this part of the fight is relatively easy. It's definitely more difficult than most of the game, but yet again, this is the final boss. Obviously, it should be difficult, but nowhere near as bad as the QuickTime events. If anything, I think the damage was actually extremely easy because of my condensed milk. I thought you really had to kill them each individually, but no, damaging left enough damages right, which is very nice, but a little disappointing because, yeah, the damage part was easy. Obviously, easy and difficult are relative. Different people are good at different things in games. I really like Atomic Heart because of the crazy mechanics it forces you to learn. It's not as crazy as some like bullet hell games like, I don't know, Binding of Isaac or Toho. I don't actually have good examples there, but I do believe it's in a very comfortable spot for me at least. Now, I haven't played on a hard difficulty, so I wouldn't know how bad it can get, but overall, very, very enjoyable. Like I said before, I absolutely love Atomic Heart. Just like in the left fight, they have a double death phase, but it is relatively easy thanks to the dodge damage reduction. But with that, it's done. I've beaten the twins. You can beat Atomic Heart with only the Electro. Alright, obviously it was on normal difficulty. I may have to try this in hard difficulty sometime. Considering how much I love this game, that's a possibility for the future. By the way, this whole time I've forgotten to mention the fact that twins can just casually fly. These two insanely powerful robots went down that easily. Yeah, alright, the fight should have been 100 times more difficult. Either way, in this ending, you shoot Sechenov, but guess what? The ending is a complete twist, something no one expects, not even me. Your glove, Charles, completely betrays you, pretty much kills both of you, takes over the Jelly Man, and continues on his way, which I think is neat. But yes, that is the end of this video. Thank you all for watching and making it this far. I wanted to also give a special thank you to my channel members who support me. If you guys enjoyed Atomic Heart anywhere as much as I do, then tell me in the comments. I'm interested to see if anyone else wants to see another run, and obviously comment it if you have different ideas for this run or any other video game. I note down all of the comments I get because you never know when your comment might turn into a run that I do. The one disappointing thing about this run though is it didn't sate my appetite for this game, so you know, I had to play the 2 DLCs afterwards. Maybe I'll make videos on those sometime, but likely not because they are relatively short and I absolutely hate second DLC. First DLC is absolute gold though. Either way, this is going to be Enzo from LookIntoGaming, signing out.